Imagine spending like 3 months and $10,000 moving your online store to a brand new platform, only to wake up on launch day and realize your most loyal returning customers, they just can't log in.
Oh, man.
Right. And your organic search traffic is plummeted by 50% overnight. And to top it off, every single order receipt is going straight to your customer spam folders.
I mean, that is literally the absolute worst case scenario for an e-commerce operator.
Yeah.
And the terrifying part is that, it happens constantly. And it's entirely because the invisible kind of underlying details of a platform migration are just so easily overlooked by otherwise brilliant business owners.
Well, today we are preventing that exact nightmare. So if you are a store owner, a developer, or just, an intensely curious learner, you are absolutely in the right place. Our mission today is to unpack this really comprehensive 29-minute playbook that's specifically focused on migrating an e-commerce store from Shopify over to WooCommerce.
Right, getting into the real nuts and bolts.
Exactly. We are separating the glossy marketing myths from the honest operational, technical, and honestly financial realities of making that massive switch. Okay, let's unpack this. Give us the high-level overview of the, philosophical difference between these two giants.
Yeah, so the foundational concept you really have to grasp here is that Shopify and WooCommerce, they solve the exact same problem, right? Selling products on the internet. But they approach the solution from completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay, how so?
Well, Shopify is a managed platform, so you pay a fixed monthly subscription, and they handled the servers, the security patches, the payment compliance, the checkout infrastructure. I mean, it is entirely software as a service.
Right, they do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. Now, WooCommerce is a completely different beast. It is a free open source plugin built for WordPress. So they hand you the core commerce functionality for $0, but the unspoken agreement is that while you have to assemble, host, and maintain the rest of that ecosystem yourself.
Right, so before we even touch the logistics of, moving a database, we really have to determine if moving is actually justified. It requires understanding the fundamental shift in ownership that you're about to undergo.
Yeah, ownership is the perfect word for it.
Think about it using this analogy. Running a store on Shopify is like being a tenant in a fully serviced luxury apartment building. If the plumbing breaks at 2 in the morning or if someone is loitering in the lobby, you call the super. It's handled.
You don't even think about it.
Right. But moving to WooCommerce is like buying an empty plot of land. You own it completely, without question. But you have to build the plumbing yourself. You have to hire your own security guard. If the roof leaks during a storm, you are the one climbing up there with a bucket.
I love that. The tenant versus landlord paradigm perfectly captures the operational reality of this decision. Because becoming the landlord, it sounds appealing because of the control, but it is really not for everyone.
No, definitely not.
If you look at the raw merchant data from our source material, there are really only about 6 structural triggers that genuinely justify leaving that luxury apartment for the empty plot of land.
Okay, so rather than just, listing them all out like a textbook, let's look at the overarching themes. The first cluster of reasons seems to revolve around this sort of creeping financial ceiling. Like, you've got the rising cost stack of Shopify Plus, coupled with what developers call app sprawl fatigue.
Yeah, the financial ceiling is usually the very first pain point a business hits. If a business upgrades to Shopify Plus, their enterprise tier, that base fee starts around $2,300 a month.
Wow, just to start.
Just to start. And that number scales up based on your transaction volume. So for a business with really tight margins, or a company that relies on a massive catalog of low-cost items, that fixed monthly line item eventually outpaces the cost of self-hosting.
And then there's the apps, right?
Right, the app sprawl. I mean, a standard Shopify merchant might stack 10 to 15 different apps. One for reviews, one for subscriptions, one for email pop-ups, and each one is costing $20 to $80 a month.
Which quietly inflates that monthly overhead like crazy.
Exactly. Whereas in the WooCommerce ecosystem, those equivalent tools are often one-time software purchases, or they're just completely free open source plugins.
Okay, I see the financial angle for sure. But I've talked to developers who feel suffocated by Shopify's code limitations. Is that restriction on customization, is that a legitimate reason to jump ship?
It absolutely is, and that falls into a second category we can call the control ceiling. So Shopify provides flexibility with Liquid, which is their proprietary templating language, but, well, you're still painting the walls of their apartment.
You can't knock down the structural walls.
You cannot knock them down, no. If you have a highly bespoke pricing engine or incredibly complex B2B wholesale logic that, I don't know, needs to pull live data from an ancient legacy warehouse system, you will eventually hit a hard wall on Shopify.
And WooCommerce solves that.
Yeah, because WooCommerce gives you total PHP freedom. You own the server and the code, so you can literally rewrite the fundamental mathematical logic of how the shopping cart operates.
Which ties directly into the strict data ownership requirements some industries face, right? I mean, if you are in a highly regulated field like pharmaceuticals or certain financial services, your legal department might literally mandate that the actual customer database sits on a physical server that your company legally controls.
Exactly. Shopify's cloud model just doesn't permit that level of isolation, but WooCommerce does.
Okay, what else?
Well, the final two triggers are highly specific to a brand's business model. First, there's avoiding third-party gateway penalties. If you refuse to use Shopify payments, maybe your industry is restricted, or you just negotiated a stellar credit card rate with a private bank, Shopify penalizes you.
Right, they tack on that extra transaction fee.
Yeah, up to 2% on their basic plan, which is massive. WooCommerce adds 0 platform surcharges for routing your money through a different processor.
That's a huge difference.
And the other specific trigger is running a content-first business. If your primary customer acquisition strategy relies on deep editorial content, heavy SEO, long-form articles, WordPress was built from the ground up as a blogging engine. I mean, its authoring tools just fundamentally outclass Shopify's native blog.
Let me push back on that last point, though. What if I'm a business owner and my only real structural issue is that content piece?
Yeah.
Like, I want world-class WordPress SEO to drive organic traffic, but frankly, I love the Shopify checkout experience. It converts beautifully. Do I really have to tear the whole house down and move to WooCommerce just to get a better blog?
You do not. And actually, the most sophisticated brands avoid doing exactly that. They use a hybrid approach, which is often called the halfway answer in the industry.
Oh, okay. How does that work?
The strategy involves running a full WordPress installation on a subdomain. So for instance, reading.yourbrand.com, and you use that for all the editorial content and SEO capture, but you retain the main root domain and the shopping cart on Shopify.
Oh, that's smart. So you get the best of both.
Yeah. Exactly. You gain the incredible authoring power of WordPress, but you don't sacrifice that globally optimized, highly secure Shopify checkout flow. The general rule of thumb from our sources is really this. Unless you can point to at least 2 of those 6 triggers being acute business-limiting pain points, a full migration is rarely worth the turbulence.
Okay, so if a listener passes that test,
Right.
and they have the valid triggers to become a digital landlord, the next logical question has to be about the mortgage. What does this actually cost? Because WooCommerce is famously marketed with a $0 price tag. You click download and it's free. Where does the money actually go?
Right, the $0 price tag. It is a brilliant marketing strategy, but it is highly deceptive regarding the true total cost of ownership.
I figured.
Let's break down the realistic 3-year math for a typical mid-market store. Let's say they have a catalog of 500 items and generate $250,000 a year in revenue.
Okay, pretty standard.
Yeah. If that merchant stays on the Shopify Basic plan, factoring in the subscription and a typical stack of monthly apps for marketing and reviews, their 3-year cost will land at roughly $4,200.
Okay, so just over $4,000 for 3 years of operational peace of mind. Let's compare that to the budget DIY WooCommerce path.
Well, if you take the absolute cheapest route with WooCommerce, buying budget shared hosting, installing free security plugins, managing the server yourself, the raw software and hosting costs are about $1,800 over that same 3-year period.
I mean, on a boardroom spreadsheet, saving $2,400 over 3 years looks like an immediate win. But I know there's a hidden catch in that DIY path.
Oh, there's a huge catch, and it's the invisible cost of labor. Running a self-hosted WooCommerce store securely requires approximately 80 hours a year of platform maintenance.
80 hours?
Yeah. We are talking about running plugin updates, testing those updates on a staging server so they don't break the live shopping cart, applying critical security patches, and managing offsite database backups. And if you value your own time or a junior developer's time, at a very modest $40 an hour, that equates to $3,200 a year in labor.
So that cheap path actually wipes out all of its own savings inside the first 12 months.
Precisely. And this is why successful scaling businesses almost never take the DIY route. They opt for managed WooCommerce. They hire a premium Tier 2 hosting provider like Kinsta or WP Engine, and they keep a dedicated WordPress developer on a monthly retainer to handle that maintenance burden.
Right, which makes sense.
It does, but when you factor in premium hosting and developer retainers, the 3-year cost for our hypothetical store jumps to roughly $6,000.
Which means managed WooCommerce is actually significantly more expensive than Shopify Basic for that tier of business. And a massive portion of that cost disparity comes down to security and compliance, doesn't it?
Yeah, security is definitely the heaviest burden of becoming the landlord. Shopify is PCI DSS Level 1 compliant by default. That's the payment card industry's highest global standard. But when you migrate your store to WooCommerce, that entire legal and technical compliance burden shifts entirely onto your shoulders and your web host. Vulnerable WordPress plugins are the primary target for automated credit card skimming bots.
That is terrifying.
It is. If a vulnerability is disclosed on a Monday and you forget to patch your site by Tuesday, your customer's credit card data could be silently siphoned away on Wednesday. You are forced to pay for premium security infrastructure to mitigate a risk that Shopify previously handled just completely invisibly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Once a business accepts the true financial and operational realities of the new platform, the actual logistics of moving the digital inventory begin. A lot of focus gets placed on what transfers, right? Your product catalogs, your variants, your customer list, historical order data.
Right, and those move relatively smoothly using automated CSV mapping or migration apps like Lit Extension.
Exactly. But the disaster scenarios occur because of the massive blind spots. Merchants completely fail to plan for the critical elements that absolutely do not transfer.
Yeah, the list of non-transferable data is where migrations succeed or fail. For instance, active subscription contracts. If you sell a product on a monthly recurring basis, those cannot simply be ported over because the new payment gateway doesn't have the vaulted credit card tokens.
What else?
Shop Pay tokens. The encrypted data that allows for one-tap checkout on Shopify that instantly evaporates. But honestly, the single most disruptive blind spot is customer passwords. They never, ever transfer between these two platforms.
Okay, for the non-technical listeners, explain the mechanism behind that. Why can't we just export a spreadsheet of passwords and upload it to WooCommerce? It seems like it should be simple data entry.
I get why it seems that way, but it comes down to a universal cybersecurity standard called hashing. Passwords are never stored in plain text. When a customer creates a password on Shopify, the system uses a complex mathematical algorithm to scramble that password into an unrecognizable string of characters. Hashing isn't like translating a word from English to Spanish where you can easily translate it back. It is like baking a cake. Once you mix the raw eggs, flour, and sugar together and bake it, you can never unbake the cake to get the raw eggs back.
Oh, wow. I love that analogy.
Yeah, Shopify baked the password using their specific recipe. WooCommerce uses a completely different recipe. The new platform simply cannot read the old data.
So think about the real-world consequence of that mechanism on launch day. You flip the switch, your shiny new WooCommerce site goes live, and a customer who has been buying from you for 3 years tries to log in. Their password fails.
Yep.
They assume your new site is broken, or worse, that their account was deleted. If you do not proactively send a mandatory password reset email to your entire customer base the morning you launch, you will be buried under a massive avalanche of support tickets from angry customers claiming they are locked out.
Oh, absolutely. It is the single most common, entirely preventable crisis of any platform migration. It simply requires acknowledging the technical limitation and planning a massive communication wave to guide your customers through the friction of resetting their credentials.
Okay, moving the database and dealing with passwords, that's the highly visible, noisy part of the project. But this deep dive needs to illuminate the silent killers.
Ooh, yes. The silent killers.
These are the invisible infrastructure breaks that quietly drain a business's revenue in the weeks following a launch, often without the owner even noticing until the monthly accounting report. Let's start with the SEO trap. Why can't we just use the official URL redirect tool built into Shopify to point old links to the new site?
Well, the flaw in that logic is assuming those redirects exist independently of the platform. Those Shopify redirects live exclusively inside Shopify's proprietary server environment.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so the moment you point your domain name's DNS records away from Shopify servers and over to your new WooCommerce host, that entire map of redirects instantly ceases to exist.
So it is the digital equivalent of moving your physical retail store to a new building across town, but forgetting to update your address on Google Maps and failing to leave a forwarding sign on the old door.
Exactly.
Customers, and in this case, search engine web crawlers, they just show up to an empty lot.
Right. And to make it worse, the URL structure itself changes fundamentally between the platforms. Shopify utilizes flat URLs, meaning a product page path looks like your website.com/products/the item name. WooCommerce, by default, utilizes a permalink structure. Their path looks like your website.com/products/the item name. Notice the subtle shift there, from plural to singular.
Wait, really? Products versus product. To a human, it's one letter. But to Google's indexing algorithm, that one-letter difference means the old page is entirely gone. It returns a 404 error.
Exactly. And the organic traffic data surrounding this mistake is brutal. The source material outlines two paths. First, the teal line. This represents a successful migration where the merchant builds a meticulous one-to-one spreadsheet mapping every old flat URL to its new permalink destination using 301 redirects.
Okay, so that's the good path.
Yes, but even with a perfect map, you will experience a temporary 10 to 15% dip in organic traffic while Google processes the new architecture. It typically recovers in 8 to 12 weeks.
And the other path.
The red line is the nightmare scenario. If you fail to map those URLs, broken redirects will cause a permanent 40 to 55% drop in organic search traffic. Years of compounded SEO equities simply vanish overnight.
That is genuinely terrifying. Okay, the next silent killer is something called the SMTP trap, which affects transactional emails like order confirmations and shipping updates. What is the mechanism failing here when someone moves to WordPress?
So when you install WordPress out of the box, it defaults to sending system emails using a very basic server protocol called PHP mail. The mechanical problem is that modern, highly aggressive spam filters used by Gmail, Apple, and Outlook, they do not trust PHP mail because it lacks cryptographic authentication.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning it doesn't have the proper digital signatures proving the email actually came from your domain. Consequently, 30 to 60% of your automated order receipts will be instantly routed into your customers' spam folders.
So a customer spends $150 on your new site, their credit card is charged, the screen goes blank, and their inbox shows absolute radio silence.
Exactly. And the resulting panic is incredibly expensive. Customers assume they've been scammed, they immediately demand refunds, they initiate chargebacks through their credit card companies, and they just flood your customer service phone lines.
So how do you fix it?
To prevent this, you absolutely must configure an SMTP tool, which is a dedicated, authenticated email delivery service, and test it rigorously before you ever consider switching the live traffic over to WooCommerce.
Wow. Okay, beyond SEO drops and spam filters, there is a literal conversion cost to leaving the Shopify ecosystem. I want to remind you, the listener, about the sheer power of ShopPay. Because ShopPay vaulted tokens evaporate during the move, every single returning customer who is used to a frictionless checkout is suddenly forced to get their physical wallet out and manually type in a 16-digit credit card number.
Yeah, we really cannot understate the friction that manual data entry introduces, particularly on mobile devices. Shopify's internal data indicates that the ShopPay ecosystem can deliver up to a 50% higher conversion rate compared to a standard form-based guest checkout.
50%?
Yes. When a customer can check out with a single tap using facial recognition, impulse buying thrives. When you introduce the friction of form fields, a significant percentage of those impulse buyers will simply abandon the cart. That is a massive conversion lift that cannot be replicated one-for-one by any tool currently available on WooCommerce.
I mean, we have outlined an absolute minefield here today. We are looking at scrambled passwords, shattered SEO links, spam-filtered receipts, and a guaranteed hit to mobile conversion rates. Given all of these compounding risks, what is the contingency plan? If you pull the trigger, launch the WooCommerce site, and the server crashes under the weight of the traffic, where's the eject button? Do you just keep paying full price for both platforms indefinitely?
No. Maintaining two full-price platforms would completely obliterate your profit margins. Instead, elite agencies rely on what we call the 90-day pause plan. Statistically, less than 5% of merchants actually have to execute a full rollback to their old platform.
But I'm guessing the ones who don't prepare.
Oh, the businesses that need to roll back and fail to prepare a safety net, they often lose weeks of revenue and permanently corrupt their accounting data. The pause plan relies on three non-negotiable rules.
Okay, let's break those rules down. Rule number one has to be about preserving the original environment, right? You can't just delete the Shopify account on Tuesday morning.
Correct. Rule number one is to never close your Shopify store on cutover day. Instead, you downgrade the account to the official Shopify pause and build plan. It costs around $9 a month.
That's a cheap insurance policy.
It really is. It completely disables the checkout functionality, which prevents double orders, but it preserves your entire backend, your theme, your data, your apps. It keeps it as a pristine read-only archive. You maintain this $9 insurance policy for a minimum of 90 days.
But wait, if I run the new WooCommerce store for 3 weeks and then realize it's failing and decide to hit the eject button, my paused Shopify store is now missing 3 weeks of customer and sales data.
Which brings us to rule number two, the continuous data sync. You must mandate that your team runs a fresh export of every new customer, every new order, and every inventory change that happens on the WooCommerce site, refreshing that backup weekly throughout the first quarter.
So you have a bridge.
Exactly. If you execute a rollback, you must be able to import that bridge data into Shopify so your accounting software doesn't show a massive, unexplained 3-week revenue gap.
And what is the mechanism for actually flipping the switch back? Because migrating a domain name takes time.
That is rule number three. You must pre-document the reverse DNS swap.
Wait, a reverse DNS swap? For the non-system administrators listening, explain how that actually works.
Sure. So DNS is essentially the internet's post office. It tells web browsers exactly which server to visit when someone types in your web address. When you launch WooCommerce, you update the post office to route traffic to the new server. A reverse DNS swap simply means having a literal, step-by-step technical document ready that shows your team exactly how to file a change of address form to instantly route the traffic back to the paused Shopify servers. If the new site catches fire at 3 in the morning, you don't want your developer frantically searching for server IP addresses. With a documented plan, the traffic can be reversed inside of an hour.
So what does this all mean? We've covered the structural triggers, the deceptive pricing gaps, the invisible data traps like hashing, the silent revenue killers, and the emergency 90-day eject button. If we synthesize the core trade-off for you listening, WooCommerce offers absolute, unbridled freedom. You can build whatever custom logic your business requires exactly how you want it. But the cost of that freedom is becoming your own platform team. You take on the burden of server infrastructure, security patching, and PCI compliance. Shopify's monthly fee, even when it feels prohibitively high, is essentially buying you operational silence and offloading the legal liability of payment security.
Yeah, and this raises an important question regarding resource allocation. A migration of the scale should only be authorized if 2 or more of those structural ceilings we discussed are acting as immediate, suffocating bottlenecks to your growth.
Otherwise, it's just not worth it.
Right. If they are merely minor annoyances, the massive budget required for a migration, factoring in agency fees, lost conversion momentum, and developer labor, well, it is almost universally better spent on customer acquisition, content marketing, or expanding your actual product line.
It completely circles back to our initial analogy of the luxury apartment versus the empty plot of land. Both are highly valid, successful ways to live, but you absolutely must understand the maintenance contract you are signing. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you audit your own platform strategy. If you execute a massive migration strictly to save a few $1,000s on monthly subscription fees, but you end up spending 80 hours a year patching PHP vulnerabilities, managing staging environments, configuring SMTP email protocols, and anxiously monitoring server uptime charts. Wait, did you actually save your business any money? Or did you just quietly change your own job title from e-commerce marketer to system administrator?